back to Glitter Budget with your hosts, Ann Jeanette.
And Jess.
And in today's episode, we're discussing the movie A Beautiful Mind, which was directed by Ron Howard. And it's based off of a book written by Sylvia Nasser, and the screenplay is done by Akiva Goldsman, starring Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, and like a whole bunch of other people, like big name people.
Yeah.
And the reason we're doing this movie is
September is National Suicide Awareness Month as well as Recovery Month. So for September, we're going to be doing a couple movies on addressing mental health, as well as addiction and recovery. So we were going to kick it off with A Beautiful Mind, which is one of the few movies that made me cry.
Yes. We'll get into whether or not I cried too. But this movie came out in 2001, and there were a couple of other big, for the United States, big events that happened in 2001. The lesser known was in January 15th, Wikipedia was launched. Hey! So students everywhere could research papers that they needed to get done by using Wikipedia.
Half the time, the information was wrong at that time.
Yes, because it is user edited. Like, people can write in their own information, but there is one guy that does the majority of the editing on Wikipedia.
Really?
Like, just in his free time. I don't think he gets paid for it.
What?
He just does it.
Just 'cause?
Yeah, he likes knowledge. He likes informing people and all that kind of stuff. And thank you. I don't know your name, but I will find out who you are and in some way thank you. But a bunch of people appreciate it because he actually does his research, and that's how we get a lot of the information that's on Wikipedia, other than like other people putting in their 2 cents and everything.
Yeah.
So
It's just a quick go-to, I think.
yeah,
Convenient.
it's easy. That's how we get our events for the of what happened in the year that these movies came out. But also in 2001, September 11th.
Yeah.
So like we all, everyone our age, like we were all in school when the attacks happened on the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And that's like we were around when history was happening, like history's in the making, and it's kind of crazy. I think that's why we're so fucked up.
Probably. It was one of those definitely events where everyone knows where they were at
Yeah.
that day and like what they were doing. Like I was in homeroom.
Yeah.
And I was in homeroom for whatever reason. Like when we were in homeroom, like our teachers always had like the local news or just something on TV until like we dispersed. And I remember her coming in to like turn it on, and I just remember all the teachers had already known that it had happened before we did, and just wondering like what the panic was. And then basically that was our school day, or that morning anyway. We were let out early.
Yeah.
And our parents came to pick us up because the high school that I went to at the time was very, very close to 3 Mile Island. So they weren't sure like what was happening, and we had the other plane that had crash landed in Pennsylvania as well.
Yeah.
Not too far from us. So I remember my mom coming to pick me up and like just like freaking out. I just could not understand like the gravity of the situation. Like I knew obviously something like bad had happened, but I didn't understand that we didn't know what was going to follow up. Like, are we going to expect like a legitimate attack? Like, are we?
It just like it really affects you when you watch thousands of people die live on TV.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause we were watching the news when the second plane hit, and we watched the towers fall. And I was I think I was in 8th grade at the time. Yeah, I was in 8th grade. And you don't know, like, I think however, what was I, 12, 13?
Yeah.
No idea. Like you said, you don't know, you understand the gravity of all of it. And my mom was like working all the time because she works for the Red Cross. So they needed blood for all of the victims and everything like that. But like people didn't find out for a long time what happened to their loved ones.
Yeah.
And it was like a crazy time. So, then, times just got crazier as we know.
I remember like it was a week and a half, 2 weeks before it happened. Like our family always took yearly trips up to New York, up to Manhattan.
Yeah.
My dad loved it. So we were actually supposed to go right around the time the planes hit, and we always stayed at the Marriott that was in between the towers.
Yeah.
So we were there like 2 weeks beforehand. It was one of the few times that we actually went up on one of the towers. You could like look out.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like once everything started to sink in of what was happening, it was kind of surreal to think like I just
I
was
was just
just
there.
there.
Yeah.
You know, there's that. Then one of my friends, her dad worked at the World Trade Center.
Mm-hmm.
They were living in the Poconos at the time, so he commuted, and she was like, it was one of the times that he was late for work. That's the only reason why he's here, because he happened to be running late that day. I guess when he came out the subways when I think the second plane hit,
Mm-hmm.
it was just I don't know. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. Like just to think, just wasn't his time. I guess you know what I mean. Because like
Yeah.
every other day, like he should have been there, and it was a one time his alarm didn't go off or something.
Yeah, something like it's crazy. That's crazy, and to think that like, there were thousands of other people that alarm went off just fine.
Yeah.
They got to work on time, everything, and yeah, it just that's definitely one of the reasons we're so fucked up as a generation, I think, and just nothing, nothing went right after that.
No. And just the fact too that we're still at war, longest
Yeah.
war in U.S. history.
Now, speaking of, though, in October, I think it was October 7th, was when we went into Afghanistan and started the war on terror because of the attacks on September 11th.
Right.
And, like, yeah, it's still.
It's still a thing, but I think we've gotten so used to it that I don't think most of us consider that technically we're still a nation that's in active war.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you ask somebody who's younger than us, like, "Hey, are we at war right now?" And like,
You'd be like,
"What are we?"
no. But you ask any active service member, and they'll be like, yes.
Yes, yes, we are.
Ask any of the veterans, or those currently serving, and they're like, fuck yes. PTSD, thank you.
Yeah. And it's just, like I said, though, I think it just becomes so normal in our culture and in our society right now that it's something that we don't even think about
No.
the day to day. You know, it just doesn't even register to most Americans, I think, anymore.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, anyway, back to more depressing subjects. The movie A Beautiful Mind, which is a very nice, lovely movie. I didn't cry.
Heartless, soulless. It's true what they say about gingers.
If it had been a movie about kittens with schizophrenia, you bet your ass I would have fucking cried the entire time. And I was talking with Jess before we started recording, saying like, I don't know if it was because I knew certain things that were going to happen in the movie, and that's why
Yeah.
I didn't really react, or if even if I hadn't known them, I don't know if I would have reacted the same or if I would have cried or whatever. But there were parts that I was like, oh. And what got me the close to getting messed up was when she was we'll describe the movie if you haven't actually.
Yeah.
It's a movie based off of a book, obviously, on the life of mathematician John Nash.
Yes.
He was a Nobel Prize winner for his work in.
It was game theory, and primarily it was game theory was like his big one that.
And something with economics too, modern economics, something economics.
Like differential theory, I think, or differential mathematics, and something else that was you could apply it to.
Yes.
Economics, and it was actually like in that time, like the 50s, 60s, and stuff like that. It was used on a lot of like business strategies.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was something that kind of
something that I'm too dumb to understand.
Oh yeah,
is what I'm trying to say.
I got nothing on that.
Yeah, like I could read possibly aloud some of the formulas that he had written, but I don't understand them worth a fuck.
Yeah, I'm really bad at math. I just know that he was extremely smart. He had his doctorate by the time he was 22.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly after that worked at MIT up until his mental illness brought him out of the field for quite some time.
Yeah, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and in real life, his delusions were only ever auditory. He never saw his delusions. He only ever heard them. But in the movie, they just probably for the cinematic effect, because it's much more interesting, as it were, or it's much harder to have someone that has visual and auditory delusions.
Yeah.
So like in this movie is about his life and his struggles with his mental illness and his wife dealing with it as well,
Yeah.
essentially.
Which is like, I think they just depicted him as well, just somebody like when he was in Cambridge and Cambridge and then Princeton, right? No,
We start out in Princeton.
but before that, he was in Carnegie, and then went to Princeton.
Sure.
When he was in Princeton, though, I felt bad because it's
He went to a lot of smart schools.
Yeah.
Ivy League shit.
again doctorate by the time he was 22.
Yeah. Just like he's not in our level.
No,
Okay?
he's up here. We're down here.
Yeah, we're kind of like on a ladder, we are the rubber feet.
Yeah.
That make sure the ladder doesn't move.
But like going in, like you're young, so even though everyone's in this prestigious school, like they're still young men. Like they still want to go have drinks. They still want to try to get laid, have fun, stuff like that. And you could just tell he's very somewhat disconnected, somewhat socially awkward, doesn't pick up on social cues, but
No.
is also very focused though on his work.
Yes.
So that's what he's there for. He's there to work. He's there to come up with an original idea. And that was kind of one of the things that a lot of his professors and stuff were kind of on him about. It's like, hey, like this person has already published like 3 papers. This person's already done this. And he's just like, yeah, well, they're hacks. Like they're
Yeah.
just basically rewriting the same things that we already know about.
Yeah. He was like, they're not coming up with original ideas. And that's kind of like what was holding him up, like you said, the most. And they're like, because he wouldn't attend classes either. He was just like, classes are they're a waste of time,
Yeah.
pretty much. And but he eventually did get his original idea. He got to go to Wheeler Labs,
Mm-hmm.
which was like every one of his friends that was like that's where they wanted to go.
Yeah.
And like it was one of those places that would only choose like
The best of
the
the best.
best of the best. So he ended up going, and he brought 2 of his friends with him, and that's kind of around the time that his delusions started. Well, according to the movie, his delusions started in Princeton because his friend,
roommate,
his
yeah.
roommate,
Prodigal roommate.
yeah, prodigal roommate arrives, played by Paul Bettany.
Oh, Paul Bettany.
Yeah, he's cool. But Paul Bettany plays his roommate, friend, whatever, and I always thought like. I had no idea what this movie was about when I going into it.
Oh, really?
I had no idea. I knew it had to do with math. And so like I knew that there was something off about his roommate because his roommate would be there like kind of helping him meld with everyone else, kind of like helping him with social situations and everything, but he was never there during like the big moments.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's weird. Why would he not be there? And I was like, oh my God, his roommate's not real.
Like rewatching it, because I feel like early on, especially like when they're first introduced and they're like setting up the dorm and stuff like that, like obviously you would have no clue.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a normal interaction. But rewatching it, I was like, damn, I should have picked this up, especially like when he was in his professor's office pitching him like what he finally felt because his new idea.
Yeah.
And Charles is there like in the hallway with the door open.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, so like any professor, especially in Princeton, would have been like, shut the fucking, like, don't we have something to do?
Yeah.
Like, piss off.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that like none of that was picked up on, I was like glaringly obvious at that point. I was like, how did I not pick up on that?
Yeah. So I thought that it was kind of like just the little things you pick up on. Did not pick up on the conspiracy stuff though for a while.
Well, I think if you think about it though, like, so he did do a little bit of work for the government in coding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if you think about the time that he was doing that work,
Yeah.
was huge into again
the Cold
like
War and stuff like
the
that.
Cold
wasn't it?
War and communism, and we got to make sure Russia isn't spying on us, like that whole stuff. So there really was like a very heightened sense of paranoia, especially if you're doing any type of work for the government.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a little bit. So I mean, and just the way that it was filmed and stuff like that made sense.
Yeah.
Again, aside for I think during that time, like the implant, like the ice, that
Yeah.
should have given it away a little bit.
Yeah, and the fact that like he was going to the drop point with these envelopes of all of his evidence to help find. They were trying to like get a bomb. Okay, the guy that made the A bomb.
Right. So that was like the well, they were saying that Russia somehow was able to take the technology that made the A bomb down to like
Like a
basically
portable.
briefcase, yeah,
Yeah.
size.
So they were trying to intercept the Russians essentially in making this portable atomic bomb. And eventually his he what triggered his wife to call the doctor?
It was when so he was coming back from a drop point and
Oh
again
yeah.
like in his delusions he's thinking like the guy who recruited him, Big Brother, um
Oh, Parcher?
yeah,
Yeah.
basically like throws him in the
Ed
car.
Harris, right?
Yeah.
Ed Harris. Always plays some creepy government guy.
He has the
He always
look.
does. Yeah, he does.
But pulls out, throws him in the car, was like, you were followed, like you gotta be more careful, and they're shot at. So when he comes home, like he's super late. She had called the office, he wasn't there. So she's
Mhm.
like, where the hell were you? What's wrong? And he like locks himself in the bedroom. And I think there might have been like one or two other instances where like
Oh yeah, he's trying to get her out of the house because he's like thinking that they're gonna come after him.
yes. And then
Okay,
I think
okay,
then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
too at I think the next scene too was he was at work because he was supposed to be once he got that scholarship to that lab and stuff. He was also supposed to be teaching as well, which
Yeah.
he hated doing. But he started to become so paranoid, even during classes and during the day. He was like looking out the window and very distracted. And it was
Mhm.
just coming to that point where so obvious somebody had to say something.
Yeah.
And that's what led to
Mhm.
the first hospitalization.
Yeah. And she doesn't quite believe it. So they one of the people that he brought with him to work at Wheeler had followed him one day when he was going
Oh,
to this drop
yeah.
point. I think that was Anthony Rapp's character.
Mm-hmm.
So he had followed him, saw that it was like this abandoned mansion type place, and he was putting envelopes that said classified with a wax seal on them into this mailbox. And so she goes to this place, finds all of the envelopes. They were never opened.
Well, too, and then she followed, well, went, showed up to his office
Yeah.
and like let me into his office, and it was just
The walls are
covered in
covered.
like magazines,
The
newspapers.
typical like conspiracy theory type newspaper articles, like strings leading to other strings and all this kind of stuff, like a web of shit.
It was just nonsense, really. I mean,
Yeah. So she he goes through the I think it's an insulin shock therapy because they were injecting him with insulin.
were they?
Yeah.
I just assumed it was something to calm him down while they were giving him the typical electric shock therapy.
No, they were cuz like I just was watching it really recently and they were like, "Hey, like we're going to inject the insulin." And I was like, "That's fucking weird. Why would they inject him with insulin?" And then at a certain point because the medicine like he starts taking medicine and he gets to a point where like he feels like he can't work anymore. He can't concentrate.
Yeah.
He feels like he can't be there for his wife and his child and stuff like that. So he stops taking the medicine.
Yeah.
And his delusions come back. And it gets to a point where his wife is like fearing like she stumbles on to this shed that's out back that he had started doing his newspaper article stuff again. And then she finds out that he stopped taking the
Yeah.
medicine, the delusions are back, and they're getting to a point where like it's dangerous because the one delusion is pretty much telling him like she's compromised. You gotta get rid of her. So she calls the doctor. The doctor's like, we're gonna have to like up your insulin shock therapy. We're gonna have to do this, that, and the other thing. And he's just like, I can't. I don't want to do that because then I'm not gonna come back from the hospital.
Right.
Not gonna do that. So she stays with him
Yeah.
and helps him through this non-medicated
Yeah.
journey.
Which is like, it's rare that somebody can like fully stop like all medications and treatment. But you need to think about it too. Like the mental health care that we had back in the 50s and 60s is not where we're at now. And like a lot of the medications I'm sure he was on was probably a lot of like, whatever antipsychotics they had back then and a lot of like sedatives. So
Yeah.
you really are just numb, flat affect, very disconnected,
Yeah.
just from your environment and building relationships. And, I think like one of the scenes when I first watched it that was hard for me to watch, God, when it probably first came out, was the shock therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just then, like if you, like the movie does a beautiful job at them courting each other and
Mhm.
like the love that they had for each other and watching that kind of just disintegrate because of his mental health and medications that he's on. There's one part where she is trying to be intimate with him and he just completely, like you can just tell he's very uncomfortable with it and there's just like nothing there. And she asks if it's because of the medication and he says yes. And she just like goes in the bathroom and just breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, like screaming and like throwing stuff. Just, I think, just so frustrated that this is my life now and this is the relationship I have and this is what we have to try to deal with. And just, it's so unfair.
Yeah.
It just, that just broke me. Like, it,
Yeah, that was the part that I got like probably the most upset by. Didn't cry, but I was close to tearing up. It was just like, oh shit. Like that's I think a lot of people, or maybe it's just me, have gotten to a point where they were screaming, crying, freaking out. Just me? Just me?
wait, in regards to,
Just life. Sometimes you get a breaking point and you're like,
oh,
ah.
yeah.
Oh, okay, thank God.
I was like,
That was weird. I mean, I am weird, but like I thought it was
no,
very
it's,
weird.
yeah, no,
Okay.
you're good.
But yeah, like I think a lot of people can relate to feeling like they're at that breaking point, and then you just kind of you have to feel your feels,
Yeah.
let it out, and then you can rationally deal with them.
I think it was not too long after the scene where he decided to stop taking his medications,
Yeah.
and so it's just, I, I don't know. You really do. And I think a lot of people who struggle with severe mental illness, you do struggle with, am I a better person on or off the
Yeah.
medications? Because, like I said, some heavy duty meds, like they do have that kind of effect on you a little bit. And, you want to be able to feel and interact. Like you don't want to just be numb.
Mhm.
And obviously, like the therapies and stuff like that we have out now, are completely different back then. I mean, I don't even know there's any hospitals in the U.S. anymore that are still doing like traditional electric shock therapy. I knew back around that time there was two on the East Coast that I knew of. I think there
Mhm.
was one in Jersey and Shepherd Pratt in Baltimore was still doing that. But I think a lot of it they've moved away from. Some therapies that they're doing for people who like severe bipolar, schizophrenia that aren't responding to your traditional medications or injections are doing something that's semi similar to electric shock therapy. It's like I don't remember the exact name of it, but it's basically like electric like magnetic waves.
Oh,
But they're
okay.
able to like target what section of the brain they want versus where electric shock therapy it's like let's just see what happens and hope for the best.
Yeah. Just shock the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like
So I think
restarting a car.
the last place in PA that I actually heard about it for the first time, I want to say it was like the Malvern Institute, I think by Bethlehem.
Mm-hmm.
I think was starting to like look into that and start to offer those kind of therapies. So, but like I said, I mean, it was like last resort, like get approved several hospitalizations, like long term type of stuff for them to be like, all right, maybe this is something we should try. But
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think the movie kind of, like I said, portrayed a little bit how this type of mental health can affect literally every aspect of your life. But John was very lucky, one, to just be the person that he was, like just super intelligent and be able to recognize like how to manage it without medications. But he was also very lucky to have a home and someone that was very supportive and was going to help
Yeah.
him to be able to still go to work. Because eventually, like some of his like people that he worked with at Princeton basically let him do what he needed to do to like have purpose and keep working on his math and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think if he weren't the kind of person that he was, like if he wasn't this great mathematical mind and didn't have that kind of support, if he were just a regular schmo with schizophrenia, he would not have been treated the same way.
Oh God,
He would
no.
not have been like, I don't think he would have gotten the same kind of support. He probably, his illness would have gotten worse.
Yeah. Well, I think particularly like with the career aspect of it,
Yeah.
like
Like if it were most other people, their careers would have been ruined, and they wouldn't have still ended up getting a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
And getting so many different like medals throughout his life and everything, and just awards and all that kind of stuff. Like,
He eventually did officially go back as a faculty member, I think in 95, like mid 90s.
hmm
So
that was after the movie ends around, like the movie ends like after he accepts the Nobel Prize, and he went on to still teach
Yeah.
at Princeton and whatnot, and he and his wife ended up dying in 2015. They both died in a car crash.
Yeah.
What you said that after they were on the way back from him receiving an award.
Another award. It wasn't like he only had the one Nobel like in the 90s. I don't remember what the other award was for, but yeah, they coming back from receiving it, unfortunately, got into that car accident.
But
As they were saying too, like when I was, reading some of the stuff of like why they did it, like Russell Crowe did not want to meet the real
John
Nash. He didn't want that to affect his performance, and John Nash is like, "Fuck you."
just showed up.
Just showed up. It's like my life, but him and his wife, like, they never wanted their story to be made into a movie or like kind of put out there like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that. Like it's kind of exploitative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in a way, it's helpful for, like you said, for the purposes of understanding certain mental illnesses a little bit better, getting a different look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Where this is what can happen to someone who has schizophrenia. Like, they can still lead a normal life.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't. If you're diagnosed with something like this, it's not a death sentence. It's not.
I feel like especially around that specific diagnosis, I think a lot of people automatically think that they're like someone who has schizophrenia is dangerous or just can't, like you said, cannot function whatsoever, and that's like absolutely 100% not the case. Like I said, can be degenerative, but I think now, like with the right support, and that's the main thing, like supports, having a routine, having people and its social interactions and stuff like that, that is almost key to like having successful like treatment. But yeah, I think that's like the big stigma against somebody who's diagnosed with any type of schizophrenia, is that they just can't function in society. Like, they have to be basically handheld with everything that they do, and that they could be dangerous. And that's not the case in most instances. You know.
Well, I think in the case of any mental illness, having support is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Just having understanding and having people there that can like help you navigate this, what ends up being like, life is hard for just about everyone.
Yeah.
But it can be exceedingly difficult when you have depression, when you have even more debilitating
severe anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Debilitating like mental illnesses. It can be difficult, but if you have the right people surrounding you and helping you, and I think routines definitely help and stuff like that. Lowering your stresses, like the things that will stress you out, because stress is what like
can
really
be a huge trigger.
Yeah. So I think that that's helpful for anyone with any kind of mental illness or struggling with anything like that.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I thought it was pretty cool that like he just went on the set and was like, "Well, you're making a movie about my life, so
here I am."
Yeah. But I guess like because he ended up just showing up on set. I mean, Russell Crowe like spoke with him for a little bit and started to pay attention to some of his like mannerisms, that he was like, "All right, well, like if he's gonna be here, I'm gonna try to like pick up as many mannerisms and stuff like that as I can to portray in the movie." I guess there was one instance, which I think they show in the movie a little bit, where when he was like talking to John Nash and he was on set for a few days, like it took him 15 minutes to decide if he wanted tea or coffee.
Yeah.
So they kind of worked that into the movie too. And I guess all of the formulas that you see, like when he writes on like the windows and stuff like that, were his actual formulas, which I thought was really cool.
They actually, Russell Crowe had a hand double that was the math consultant on the movie. He was I forget the math consultant's name, but they had a consultant that would make sure that all of the theories, all of the math equations and stuff like were real, legitimate, unlike in other movies where they're just fake.
Yeah.
So they were real equations and written by the consultant on the movie,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of interesting.
I thought it was interesting, but I thought it was kind of cool. Like, if you're going to do a movie on a mathematician, like, don't half-ass it. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean? Because that's his life's work portrayed as such, you know?
Yes, exactly. Don't make
So.
it some bullshit thing.
Yeah. But I guess, and I guess they said, like, they had asked John Nash after the movie was released, like, what he thought. And, he was like, it was a well-done movie. Like, everyone was great in it. He was like, but it wasn't me.
Yeah, because
So,
like they have to take artistic liberty with some things, which is the case with most movies based on real events or real people or whatever. They got to make it interesting for cinema.
yeah. Yeah, and there's
So.
going to be, I think, too, like, there's going to be parts in someone's story that you're not going to have the exact, like, you don't know exactly 100% what happens.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to take liberties, like I said, kind of fill in those gaps to be able to stretch it out into a movie and, like I said, keep it,
Yeah.
like, super interesting. But
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got to take someone's entire life and push it like into 2 hours.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be a lot of things left out, a lot of things taken out of context and stretched and whatever. But ultimately, I think it was a good movie.
Yeah.
And definitely worth the watch. You can stream it on Stars.
Yes.
So if you have the Stars app, or if you have access to Comcast On Demand or something like that, Prime with the Stars add-on, something like that, you can watch it on there.
That's how I watched it. So, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think it was a good movie, not just portraying how to kind of manage that kind of mental health, but just his life in general and his achievements and how, like, even when he was like back at Princeton, just the lives that he touched.
Yeah.
Like some of the students and stuff like that didn't approach him as like the crazy professor that they didn't want to get near. Like
Yeah.
they recognized like the genius that he was and that he was. If you could have the opportunity to sit down and talk with him about your math theories and what you wanted to learn,
Yeah.
and just your other passion, like he was still engaged. Like that's still what he wanted to do. So I thought that was pretty awesome that he was able to stay at Princeton and help mold upcoming generations.
Yeah, I thought it was cute that like he was finishing up a lecture, and all the students are leaving. They're like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, whatever." And this one guy walks up and he's like, "Professor Nash." And Nash grabs the student. He's like, "Can you see him?" She's like, "Yes." He's like, "Thank you." She's like, "Sorry, I just got to make sure." I'm always suspicious when I meet new people. I got to make sure that they're real first. And I was like, "That's kind of cute."
Yeah.
But he like, I don't know if it's true to life or whatever. If John Nash really did have that kind of sense of humor with his mental illness, but I feel like just with, that's the kind of sense of humor I have.
Yeah.
With the shit that I deal with, like I have to poke fun at things in order for me to deal with it. That's just how I cope. That's how I do whatever. Comedy helps me. So it kind of was like, I was like, oh, that's what I would do if I.
You could say it too, like, if you're gonna be like a little mad, you gotta have fun with it. Like,
Yeah.
There's the one scene too where he went to go take out the trash, and his wife overhears him talking to somebody, and he comes in, and she was like, "John, who are you talking to?" He's like,
The
"Garbage guy," and she's like, "They don't. It's night. Like they don't collect trash at night." And he's like, "I guess around here they do." And
You
then
see,
in
like,
the window, like the
yeah.
garbage, she's like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. And then they both like kind of chuckle about it because she fully believed that he was just talking to one of his delusions. And yeah. So there are a couple times throughout the movie that he kind of pokes fun at his own illness.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely give it a watch. And we're going to continue with other movies highlighting dealing with mental illness and addiction and recovery and stuff like that. So tune in for those episodes. If you like our vibe, please like and subscribe. All of our social medias will be linked in the description box down below. And we'll see you in our next episode. Bye.